All right, said Matthew McConaughey on his best day. It is Thursday night. We are back with another episode of Conversations with Commodores, and we've got a good one tonight. John Bradley out of Mount Airy, North Carolina. John, how you doing tonight, bud?
Doing well, Bernard. I really appreciate this opportunity to be on with you. And there's probably a lot of people out there that are surprised that I'm one that got asked to participate, but I sure do have looked forward to it and grateful for the chance to be here. It's a great thing that you've done and connecting guys from the past. And I look forward to it each week. Haven't been able to get on as much as I like, but it is a great thing.
Well, John, they're already rolling in. Jim Aguiano says, "What's up, Bradley?"
Angie.
OJ Fleming. They still
Hoogs.
He wants to know if they're still drug testing you. He says, "Love you, man."
Oh, that's a good one.
Coming out of Mount Airy, the home of Mayberry. And we got to start right there, JB. And I got to say, Pat Akos is in the house. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Pat.
John, how did you get your way out of the state of North Carolina with all those established football programs? What got you over to Nashville?
So I was fortunate enough in my sophomore and junior year in high school to have a coach that came and up until that point we had a coach that didn't really promote athletes from our small school. You know, Mount Airy High School was a small 2A school at the time, and I grew up wanting to go to Duke because that's where my father played football there, and so I got recruited by them a little bit my junior and senior year. I actually wanted to go to Chapel Hill and play, but went to camp there, and you know, I think at that time the Tar Heels were looking for the next Lawrence Taylor linebacker, you know, and I didn't quite fit that mold at 6 foot, 205 pounds, and you know, running a 4.9 40. It didn't register on their map. But long story short, my senior year, that coach left and went to a different school down east, and the new coach was kind of involved in state politics, and he wasn't really helping me much. And so I reached out to this coach. His name was Chuck Fiebernitz, and he was just thinking about the schools that were similar to the ones that were recruiting me, who was, you know, the Wake Forest, the Duke. I got recruited by Appalachian State. But in the end, you know, all those teams came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to come walk on and you can come to school." So it looked like that things weren't gonna pan out for me, right? And so about 2 weeks before signing day, my coach had sent videos, and I even had a coach that wouldn't share the high school Friday night videotapes with us unless we did the statistics. And so my dad would get the tapes, he would make a copy, and we'd send them out. So Coach Fiebernitz knew a guy named Charlie Coiner who was at Vanderbilt, and he sent the tape to him. They watched it, and I got a call from Bill Elias. It was about 3 weeks before signing day, and they invited me on a visit, and we flew to Nashville. And on the way out there, you know, we were assured that when I went and met with Coach DiNardo that he was going to offer me. And we got there and went through, did the typical stuff the first couple of days, and it came time to go meet with him. And my dad and I went in and sat down with him, and Corey Chavous had come out right before me, and he came out, he's like, "Yeah, you know, they offered me." And we went in, and I was expecting that. And we went and sat down and we talked, and Coach DiNardo pretty much wished me well and shook my hand, said, "Well, you know, we'll be in touch." And my dad had gone and bought $350, $400 worth of Vanderbilt gear, and we were taking it home to my brothers and sisters in the town. And so, I mean, we were just kind of beside ourselves. But at that point, I kind of decided, you know, I guess my career in football is not meant to go beyond high school. And so we got on the plane to come home, and my dad was really, really messed up. I mean, on the way home, one of the flight attendants came to him and said, "Sir, are you okay? Do we need to get you something?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm okay." So got home on Sunday, and I was in school that following Tuesday, and I got a call from Rick George. He called the guidance office and asked if they would have me call him back, and I called him back, and he said that they had thought about it over the weekend, and that they wanted to offer me a scholarship. And so that's, long story short, I always have told people that I felt like that there was a higher power or something that was guiding this whole thing, because it just, the way it fell into place just wasn't. But one other thing too was Coach Symington, when they recruited, they flew him here to North Carolina, and we happened to be out of school on a snow day, and he came to my house and knocked on the door, and we came in and sat down, and he said, "I'm just here to make sure that you're actually 6 feet like you say you are." And so, that's kind of how it all played out, and I ended up in Nashville.
Well, you talk about a roller coaster of emotions.
Oh man, it was, because from the time I was in sixth grade, I loved the game of football, and I worked hard for it. I didn't have a whole lot of natural God-given ability, but I had a work ethic and like to work toward a goal. And so my dad helped me for 2 or 3 years to set goals as far as reaching a certain weight and certain lifting goals and things like that. And so then when it came right down to it, and it looked like it was just not going to work out, it was hard for a 17-year-old kid. So
what did you know Corey before you guys saw each other?
I didn't. When I saw the signing class and saw that he was from South Carolina, I thought, man, I got a connection there. Good Carolina brothers there. And so, but I did not know him before that.
I mean, in fact, tell the audience about your later connection with Corey during your time at Vanderbilt.
So, as most of you who are on here may know, when we entered Vanderbilt, you had the chance to go to the Bell Buckle, Tennessee. And, at that time in my life, I just breathed, slept, and ate football. I mean, it was what I lived for. And so when I was told we were going out to this place and they were hauling all the football equipment and the training staff and the video crews and everything, to me, it was like going to NFL training camp. And obviously, when you showed up there wasn't a whole lot other than a couple of dorms and a train that came through town at night. But we got there, and Corey was my roommate. And Corey, man, he was a character. He always could entertain, and there was no shortage of laughs during those couple of weeks while we were there. And to this day, I've bumped into him a couple of times, and he's still just got this huge smile and just always just happy. And he there were some times during my 4 years of Vanderbilt, I'd get down and frustrated because I wasn't playing defense like I had hoped, but stuck behind Jamie Duncan. And that was a hard thing. But he'd always encourage me and keep my head up and give me different pointers, because he was a smart ball player, and helped me learn to kind of study film. That was one thing I wasn't prepared for when I got to Vanderbilt. We had not done a whole lot of that in little old Mount Airy, studying film. And so
well, a lot of guys got stuck behind Jamie Duncan on the depth charts.
Yeah. And I'm always, to this day, I'm proud to tell people that's where I play. I got stuck between. Here's who I got. I got stuck between Jamie Duncan and then Jamie Winborn. And so,
hello. Hello, NFL.
Yeah, right. And so and my last year, I felt like um, in fall camp, my last year, there was a few times they let me rotate in with the first team, and I thought, man, they're going to work, they're going to figure out something for me to do here. But I think what it was is they'd always put me in to take on the fullback in the isolation block so Duncan wouldn't get hurt his shoulders or something, So, yeah.
John, we got Hunter McCarty and Eric Lancetot are with us. So thank you, fellas, for joining.
Lance Tot was there when he may have been a senior my freshman year.
Well, you said something a minute ago that caught my attention. Your dad played at Duke. How in the world did he allow you to be recruited or even consider going to Chapel Hill?
To this day, I don't know if he knows that that's where I really was hoping to go, but
well, he's going to watch this video or something.
Yeah, that's right. Family. That's right. Honestly, bro, I think I always felt like I wanted to go there just to separate myself from my dad. He obviously played at the same high school that I did, and he was a high school All-American, and so I was always kind of in his footsteps.
Shadow.
Yeah, his shadow. Yeah. And so I was wanting to just separate myself and establish my own name, and so anyway, I it was close to home, and I always had dreamed of going somewhere close to home where my friends could come and watch me play, and at the time, they Mac Brown was there, and they had a pretty solid team at the time, and so
they sure did. Ironically, my coach was Watson Brown, Mac's brother.
That's right.
During my years. Oh, we got Jason Tomachek is in the house with us.
T-check.
And we got the mayor of Nashville in the house. We got Alfonso Harvey on
Oh, Fonzo. That's my man right there. I was talking to Tomachek, texting earlier. I learned this week that he goes to a ski resort that we go to out in Utah called Powder Mountain. So I'm saying we're hoping to meet up there in the next year or so.
There you guys need to hook up. Royce Love's in the house.
Oh, Big Love.
Tyler Unzicker's in the house. I need to get all you guys on the show. Let's go. Yeah. JB,
Big Love, man. Me and Big Love used to knock heads on some isolations, man.
Yeah, I want to see those helmets. I bet those helmets are dented big time between two of y'all. Oh, here we go. We got some product. We got a helmet
right here, man.
They got some Royce Love knocks right there.
Yeah.
JB, let's talk about Bell Buckle Talent Show.
Okay. There's a couple of things that stand out from that particular year. So at the time, Chris Gaines and Coach Todd Suttles were the strength coaches, and Coach Gaines, he had his slow talk, and he came up with these T-shirts that had slogans on them for every day, and get it done. I think he was Larry the Cable Guy before Larry the Cable Guy.
Get it done.
Yeah. I think he had that slogan. He should have coined that back in the day. But so, they gave us the assignment that we had to come up with some kind of skit that the night for all the upperclassmen, and we had just gotten there. I didn't know anybody. I didn't really get to school until about 2 or 3 days before camp, and so I was still trying to get familiar with everybody. Well, we decided to come up with a skit where one of us was going to dress up like Coach Gaines, and so we got some trash bags and wrote the slogans on the trash bags, and somebody put pillows in one to be Coach Gaines, and I actually came out on my knees with flip-flops as Coach Suttles because he was 5'5", and so we did a little reenactment of them. But the two of the best things were Jim Anguiano, who's on here, and Will Jacobs, and I can't remember. There may have been one other one in there. the offensive linemen. So their skit, to this day, I can't believe it, but either Jim or Will, one of them, rubbed peanut butter on his stomach, and the other took a piece of bread and wiped the peanut butter off the stomach and ate it. And so, I mean, to this day, it's a classic that sticks out in my mind. And then Corey Chavous got up and had written a poem that shut the whole place down. Coach Donardo cut it out, shut her down because he some of his lyrics in his poem. So.
Well, I want to get Corey on here to share with us.
Yeah.
That because the statute of limitations is long gone on anything.
Right.
Oh, guys, I got JB, John Bradley with us tonight, and all kind of guys are showing up for him. And let's see if anybody's rolled in. Oh, a couple, I missed them as you were talking, but hopefully they'll pop back up in just a minute. Chris Gaines was a couple years ahead of me, and I had the honor, privilege, and responsibility of playing scout team quarterback while he was middle linebacker extraordinaire. And that was not fun.
Right.
But Chris was a hell of a player, very upright, he was the nicest dude in the world. He'd knock your block off, pick you up, dust you off until you get back in the huddle, see you next play.
Yeah.
But boy, you talk about a player. Ooh.
JB, he was as intense of a strength coach as he was a player, from best I could tell.
You know who he reminded me of just a few years before his time was Mike Singletary with the Bears.
Yeah.
With those eyes, you're looking 10 feet right across the line.
Yeah, he was something. And then, another thing, I remember my dad, when he played at Duke, there was a guy named Dick Biddle who he had won National Defensive Player of the Year or something, and I remember my dad talking about how he had 32 tackles or something. And we went to Vanderbilt and saw that Coach Gaines had 37 or something.
I was on the sidelines for that game at Tulane in '87. He tackled everything that moved that night.
So my dad thought nobody had ever had more tackles than his guy, who was All-American at Duke. But then we saw that, we're like, golly, that's impressive.
It's one of the most impressive athletic endeavors or results that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I know it's the Vanderbilt record. It may still be the SEC record. And frankly, it's got to be up there nationally for a game.
Right.
Phenomenal. But John, let's talk about that being a big fish in a little pond, coming out of high school, coming out of Mount Airy. You get to Nashville starting to blow up a little bit, not like it is now, not like the circus that it is now. But talk about that adjustment period. Who did you room with that first year? How did you get your feet on the ground as far as academically, athletically, socially? Was that a tough transition for you, or was it not so bad?
Yeah, for me, it was a little challenging. I was always one that kind of was slow to get comfortable with things. But the first thing I can remember about having to do that and knew that I was no longer in my mom and dad's house and I was going to have to grow up was I came to Vanderbilt football camp the summer before my freshman year. And I flew out there and got to the stadium right outside of McGugin, and they had put us up in the dorms all the way over on 21st Avenue, Kassam or something, over at the very corner of 21st Avenue and West End, right by the Vanderbilt sign. And I had my bags, and I can't remember if it was Rick George or Charlie Coyner, one of them. I was like, hey man, how am I supposed to who's gonna take me over to the dorm over here? And this is being from Mount Airy or Mayberry. He said, son, you're not in Mayberry anymore. You got to figure it out. And so that was my first realization that it was time to grow up a little bit. And so I shortly figured that out. Well, then got to Vanderbilt and in Nashville for camp. and made some friends. And they actually had put me with a regular student, a kid from New Jersey. They had signed me to, and I was coming there thinking I was going to be rooming with another player, having the same schedule, having to get up for study hall with Brad Bates and Derek Gregg, and but they put me in this regular student, and I was just like, golly, this isn't gonna work. Well, he and I didn't jihad real good, and finally it all hit the fan when I went to the housing people and said, look, you gotta change this or this guy's gonna get hurt. And they were like, today if I had said something like that, they might be calling me downtown or something. But I told him, I was like, look, man, and Angry can attest this because he and I both went down to the housing people and said, this has gotta change. And so about halfway through the first semester, they moved me in with Jim Anguiano, and it was a dream come true. I mean, Angie was never met a stranger, and so I was able to kind of ride his coattails for a little while, just meeting people and becoming more comfortable with everybody around me. And I've always told people that going and playing on a team sport like that, I mean, it was just a blessing, really. But you had a built-in family, more or less. And obviously there were the players, other upperclassmen that were going to do their normal picking on the younger kids and stuff like that. But it was all in good fun. And so Angie, Will Jacobs were probably the first two that I met. There was a guy that came as a walk-on named Devin Green, that I met at orientation. He helped me to kind of get acclimated, and then just being in Branscombe Quad, we'd sit down in the lobby there at the doors, and you'd meet people all day long, and so
I don't mean to interrupt you, JB, but you just hit on something that I just thought of. Football players sitting in Branscome's front lobby went on for decades.
Yeah.
Decades. Frankly, because all the girls had to walk right by there.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, me and Jim and there was a guy named Richard Calhoun, Eric Wisman, there was a few others. I mean, we would sit down there for hours and just watch. It was good times. And then
it was literally being in a fishbowl with
all
that glass all through there.
Oh man. And we were freshmen, and you probably remember big James Manley Chick. After when in the winter workouts, we'd have to be over there at 5:30 or 6 at McGugan or on the field to run. And after it was over, he'd have an 8 o'clock class. He didn't want to. He was living off campus and didn't want to have to go back home. So he'd come over and sit in the lobby, and he'd be hitting us up for our money on our student cars to buy him something at the Munchie Mart. So,
oh, hey JB, we got a couple more in here. Sean Wilson says to tell you hello.
Big Sean.
We got Billy Smith, one of the Keystone Cops.
Billy,
sending some love your way. Guys, we've got JB. He was 94 to 98, Coach DiNardo's time period. I want to talk about Friday night forearms. What's that mean?
So that goes back to Coach Gaines. So let's see, we were sophomores, and Jim and I were living together again, and we really kind of formed this little group between myself, Jim, and Coach Gaines that we worked out together. And he came up with this exercise, basically where you put a bar behind your back with 45-pound weights on it, and you roll it up and down. And if you remember, Coach Gaines had some forearms that were as big as most people's biceps,
like Popeye.
Yeah. And so me and Jim, I was like, man, how can we get some of those forearms? You got to come in on Friday and hit Friday night forearms, boys. And so he, Friday after or Friday morning, he'd be calling our room, waking us up.
Mhm.
Boys, y'all ready to smash some Friday night forearms? And so, we'd get all geared up for it and pumped up, and we'd go over to the weight room, three of us, and we'd hit those forearms hard, man. Now I never could quite get the ones that he had some genetics, I think, that the rest of us didn't have. So
Oh, that's good stuff. That's so good. Let's
we
talk
had
a
some
little
good
bit.
times. I mean, he would call us at all hours of the night and just get us hyped up to come work out. And
He needed some company. He needed some guys to be down there with him.
yeah.
All right, I got another topic that you gave me. This is interesting.
Uh-oh.
Padlocks and weights in jock straps.
I talked to Jim the other day when he saw that I was going to be on here. And so I don't know if it was like this for you, Bernard, but coming out of high school, I was 205, 210 coming in to try to play middle linebacker, outside linebacker in the SEC. And, most of the defensive backs were bigger than that. So I got there and they put us on a good strength program and set goals. Well, one of the things that they would set weight goals for us to try to achieve, because they felt like you needed to be at a certain weight to be playing that position. And so I couldn't put on weight to save my life. Later on I didn't have that problem, but I couldn't put it on at the time. And so if you like, they'd set a certain goal for I don't know if it was each week, you had to maintain a certain weight. And so when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to hit those weights, and they were, it was kind of counterproductive what they would do, because if you didn't meet the weights, you had to run. And so it was like, man, they're going to take more weight off of me.
Yeah.
So we'd be stressing about this weigh-in all day, all week long. And so we'd get to the weight room, and they had a scale in the locker room that you could go and kind of get an idea where you were before you went into the weight room to actually get the official weight. And so we'd come in there and we'd kind of gauge where we were and decide if we needed to add a few pounds before we went into the weight room to get the official weigh-in. And so, you could only drink so much Gatorade before you'd get sick. You'd build up that water weight, and they had the Gatorade machines there in the locker room. And I mean, we'd suck gallons of that stuff down to try to put on some fake pounds. But when it came down to it, they had padlocks on our lockers, and a couple of 2.5 pound weights, and you had to be careful where you put those things now, but you could stuff them down in the jock strap. And a few times I added an extra 5 pounds on before I went into the weight room. So
that's so good. That's so good.
I just had to do what I had to do.
Oh, guys, I got John Bradley, and he's telling some great tales tonight, just sharing some of the life of a college football player, just trying to make his goals. JB, I want to talk about your wake up to the SEC football moment, if you had one.
Probably for me, there's a couple. First was when I got there, when I got to Vanderbilt, and Gerald Collins was there for his 6th year. And I wore number 40 coming out of high school, and when I got to Vanderbilt and saw Gerald, who was wearing number 40, I knew that probably wasn't going to be my number that year. And so when I saw Gerald at 6'3", 250, and we got to Bell Buckle, and they were running us through some tackling drills with our linebacker core was pretty stout then, man. We had Gerald was kind of he was the old man, the leader at the time, and then Duncan was a redshirt freshman, Carlton Hall, Kirk Williams, Mark Jeffcoat. I mean, we had some guys that and then of course they converted Anthony Jordan to a linebacker later. And so we'd have some of these tackling drills. I mean, you weren't tackling just anybody, it was, and so they put us in some goal line stands, and that was probably one of the eye-opening things for me. And then the second thing is the first game of the season that year, we played Alabama, and I remember not making the traveling squad, and I was in I think I got out of class and I was in the dorm, and I heard all these police cars and all this ruckus coming through campus. Mm-hmm. And I saw what it was. I saw that it was the kind of the motorcade, or if you will, leading the bus back out to Brentwood to stay in the hotel. Or no, I'm sorry. So they were going to Alabama taking them to the airport. Mm-hmm. And I swore to myself that I would never not be on that squad again. And so that helped me. And so then trying to think of what the first game was that I was able to travel to an SEC. I can't remember what game it was, but anyway, that realizing that I wasn't playing 2A high school football anymore. I was at a real program, and I was going to see the best. And I tell this story. It was a little later on in my years at Vanderbilt, but the craziest SC experience I had was when we went to down to LSU to Baton Rouge to play. Mm-hmm. And it was after DiNardo had left and gone to LSU, and Coach Dowhauer was the coach, and they, historically they had worn their white jerseys at home. Mm-hmm. Well, Dowhauer said, "You're not going to do that," so they made them wear their dark colored jerseys, and we rolled into their stadium down there on the bus. And I bet you there was 8,000 or 10,000 people that lined that road going into their locker room. And their fans were throwing beer bottles and cussing and shooting at the bird when you came in. And so they had whiteout Vandy night, and all the students up in this stadium had white T-shirts on. And ended up they got us 35-0, I think, that year. And even when the fans were 3 feet from our bench, and they're making jokes about us on the sideline, and they're pouring their beer and throwing it out on the sideline. And I was like, man, this is crazy. But that intensity in all those stadiums that we got to go to, just priceless. I mean, it was just you walk into the Swamp or Bryce Williams Stadium or down in Athens, our freshman year, we got the best of them down in Athens. And I don't know if that answers your question out, but those were the things that stick out into my mind about the SEC.
Well, John, that definition or that description by you is what the SEC is about.
Yeah.
No, we all hear the slogan, "It just means more." Well, it's because it's true. It's just college football is so important in the South, and the passion for your home team, your home school, when you're getting pelted with whatever they're throwing, you ain't welcome around here, my friend.
That's right. And the other thing too was when these teams that were coming to play us in Nashville, you would see them roll in with their RVs and tailgating starting on Wednesday. They'd be there.
Yeah.
They'd be there ready for the game on Saturday. I mean, they were there in full force. And so it was, there was nothing like a Saturday afternoon, boy. I mean, it was great.
John, we got one of my teammates, one of my classmates, John Denardi's in the house.
Hey,
We
John.
got Coach Gary Shepard is in the house. I guess Linda let him off from washing those dishes at the steakhouse. Guys, I got John Bradley with us, and we're just living some good times. Back in the day, he played in the mid-90s for DiNardo and Dowhauer. Where was a fun place for you on or off campus to just get away from football, to get away from school and academics for a little while? You have any place that shoot pool or just go let out some steam a little bit?
For me, Bernard, I don't know if you remember. Oh dang! I just drew a blank. Doug Harris.
Mhm.
He was a big fan. He would always invite us out to his house on the weekend, and would always just welcome us with a Sunday afternoon meal. And so there was a few times where if I needed to get away from the stress of it all, and he always was welcoming as far as that go.
Mhm.
Another person was the registrar at Peabody College, Betty Lee. She helped me out a ton as far as if I needed to drop classes and change things, but you probably had the same thing, but they would assign us a mentor, I guess, when we would get to campus.
Mhm.
And she wasn't mine. There was another lady that was mine, but I kind of took her on as I volunteered her to be my own mentor, and she welcomed that, and so she was always there to kind of help deal with any kind of homesickness or anything. Although I have to say that my parents and my family, while I was there, there was only a handful of times that they didn't come to Nashville on the weekend when there was a game, especially during the season.
Sure.
And so there weren't a whole lot of times where I had that homesickness feeling. But there's also there was a hill. I don't know what the name of it was, but there was a hill kind of up to the west of campus. I've seen pictures where they've taken it from the hill up there. That
Mhm.
you could go up there and you could look at the city lights and stuff. And so I'd go up there occasionally.
That's cool.
And then one other coach Ken Wisenhunt was a special teams coach when I was there.
Mhm.
And he would always have us over for Thanksgiving when we couldn't go home because we had the bye week, had to stay for Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so he'd have us over to his house, and we'd shoot pool there and just have a good time.
No, that stuff like that's important because you're so regimented during the school year, particularly in the fall with all those obligations plus your academics and what little bit of social life you could squeeze in there. But just having an outlet every once in a while to just get away was
Right.
more important than you realize.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about the lifespan of an athlete because we all have that end date when it comes to organized sports. As much as our mind may want to compete for the rest of our lives, our bodies kind of are defiant after a while.
Right.
Do you remember getting to that point where you just knew this is the end of my organized football days?
Yeah, I don't know if I've reached that point yet or not, Bernard. I still feel
Love it.
to go out and compete, but and to be honest with you, so I've always kind of the way that my ending came at Vanderbilt was Coach Woody came in, and he was the coach it would have been the coach my last 2 years, and well, he was there, but he became the head coach. And so when he became the head coach, there was he kind of had a system and a certain type of player that he was looking for that was fast and as I mentioned earlier, I was pretty fast for 10 yards, but running a 40-yard dash, I think I may be fudging a little bit, but I clocked a 4.69, I think, one time during pro timing day or something. But I kind of saw that it came to my senior year, and obviously Jamie Winborn was a freshman and phenomenal player, and I kind of saw that I wasn't going to fit in that scheme as far as playing linebacker, I guess.
Well, JB, the linebacker room during your years was full of NFL guys.
You're right, but I thought I was competing with them. I thought that was my future too.
But well, I'll tell you this: it could only have made you better because
no,
the competition was nothing but pushing.
No question about it. And like I said, like my I was a redshirt junior, so it was my senior year in school. But I was a redshirt junior. I committed myself. Look, I'm gonna give it all I've got, and I stayed through spring break and I stayed through summer working out because that's what I wanted to do. I was like these kids that thought it worked out for me to go to college. It's going to work out for me to go to the NFL, you know. And even though I'd never played, I started one game my 4 years at Vanderbilt, and that was because Carlton and AJ didn't make it back for something one time, and they benched them for the first quarter. So I got to start against TCU my redshirt junior year.
There you go.
But so I felt like, man, I can do this. You know, I was one of these ones that just believed I could do it. And so I stayed and worked out. And as fall came around, I mean, I played the best I'd ever played in my career during fall camp. And even going back to Corey Chavous, they moved us back on campus for fall camp our senior year. And I got so mad one day just because I'd made a couple of plays and they sat me down or something. I was pissed off and intercepted a couple of passes in practice, and I never was one to talk junk, but I intercepted Greg Zolman, I think, and ran it back, and I said something like, "Yeah, y'all gonna make me look like an All-American out here," and so they saw that I was mad. And Corey came to me after practice, and he's like, "Man, you think you should be playing?" I said, "Yeah, I think I should be playing somewhere for sure. I feel like I've earned it." And so, you know, it just came down to it that I just didn't. Jamie was who he was, All-American. You know, people came to see him play, and I was there to see him play too. You know, it was exciting. And so that kind of took the air out of my balloon. I had a good year as far as special teams go, but I was really shooting to play linebacker. I wanted to play linebacker. I loved the physical part of the game, and so I had another year left to come back, and I kind of debated on it, and there was a graduate assistant that had gone to Eastern Illinois, Ben Norton, and he reached out to a couple of us and said, "Hey, you know, if you don't think you're going to play at Vanderbilt, maybe you could go ahead and graduate and come try play a year here if you thought about it." A series of events happened, and I'm pretty strong in my faith, and so spring camp of my senior year, would have been my 5th year, came around, and I had not probably put in the work that I did the prior year. But spring came around, and I was, you know, they had me kind of starting rotating with Jamie a little bit, and 2 weeks into it, we had a scrimmage, and I said I kind of decided that I was going to go back to my, kind of like Rocky, I was going to go back to the basics, do the things that worked for me in high school. And so Friday night, I went and I watched I think The Program was a big football movie then. I watched that and got all hyped up and said, "All right, I'm gonna give it my all one more time." And we had a scrimmage on that Saturday, and it was the worst performance I'd ever had in my football career. I mean, it was pathetic. And part of it was probably lack of mental preparation, and I wasn't physically the way that I should have been. But after that game, or after that scrimmage, I went home that night and I was like, it's gotten to the point where it's not as fun as I used to think it was. I mean, I loved the physical part of the game. I love to hit, I love to tackle. And it had just gotten to the point where it was like, I don't have that burning desire to go out and just abuse my body. And so that Monday, I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And I called my dad, and he was excited. He thought, this is my year, I'm going to start. And I said, Dad, I don't think I got it anymore. I don't have that burning desire like I used to. I don't know if it was because I kind of saw the writing on the wall so anyway, we talked, and he said, well, son, it's your decision. You do what you got to do. And so I decided then, in my church, we at 19 to 21 years old, you a lot of times go on a 2-year mission for church. And so I had thought about that some, and that's what I decided to do ultimately. And so I went in Monday, told Coach Woody I needed to meet with him because they had just elected captains. They had just elected me to be the captain that year and so I told him, I said, I don't see that I fit into what your plans are going forward. And to be honest with you, I've just kind of lost the drive that I had for all these years. And he said, yeah, I respect that. And he said, so what I want you to do is I want you to come down and for the team meeting on Tuesday. I think Tuesday was practice. He said, I want you to stand up and address the team and tell them what you've decided to do. And so I did. I came and stood up in front of all these teammates, these guys that had put their trust in me, and told them what I just told you, that there came a day where I was just like, I'm probably not doing any good for our team where I'm at mentally right now. In the back of my mind, I thought, man, I've still got one more year though, that if I go on this mission, then that year will still be year of eligibility, still maybe be there, and I can come back and go and play somewhere.
John, what was the response from the team?
It was amazing. There were some that were kind of like, what are you doing? But for the most part, when I told them what my plans were for the next 2 years, I got calls. I bet I got 15 or 20 calls from my teammates that told me just how much they respected the decision that I made, and how much they appreciated the leadership that I had tried my best to give over the years. And I remember leaving McGugan that day, and just, not to show my sentimental side, but I remember just crying that day, because it was like this part of my life that I had devoted so much time and effort to, and that I had loved so much, just in a moment like that was probably over.
John, was it a relief? Did you feel like there was a burden that was lifted?
No, I actually, probably the opposite. I probably felt like I had just created a bigger burden. Didn't know what was in store next. I knew that for the 2 years what I was going to be doing, but it was kind of going back to what we talked about earlier with leaving home and coming to college, that now there's a new reality setting in, that you're this part of your life, and this thing that you had hoped for, that was maybe you hoped was going to be a means of providing a lifestyle for you down the road, is no longer there. You gotta kind of
Yeah.
pivot and adjust and figure out what you're going to do.
Any guys privately come up to you and tell you they felt the same way?
Not, I don't recall anybody.
Probably because they didn't have the guts to do so, but they probably felt if
Yeah.
because for a 21-year-old guy to stand up in front of 100 of his brothers, and basically you're testifying, you're
Yeah.
giving your heart, your head to those guys, and you wouldn't have done that, I bet you, if it was a complete room of strangers.
No, not at all. And what's even more telling about it is that 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to that, we had called a team meeting, me and Lamont Turner and Rock Batten, and there may have been one other one. We were going to be the captain. We'd called this team of how we were going to turn this thing around that next year. We got to get some things. We'd come up with this plan of how we were going to take it back to our high school days when we'd had all this success and glory, and that's how we were going to turn out. And then, 2 weeks later, here I am saying, "Hey, man, I'm hanging it up." It was, it was really, really bittersweet.
Tell me how that moment, that meeting, was that a turning point? Was that a pivotal time, not just of your life then, but did it set you down another path that maybe you've reflected back over the years of that time?
I've told people that there's been probably now 4 points in four situations in my life that I can think of like that. One was when I got the offer to come to Vanderbilt and knew that my dream of playing college football was going to come true, and I was able to grow up. Two was when I made this decision and kind of came to the realization that that there is a greater purpose and meaning to life than football and the worries and stress of the world.
Mm-hmm.
The third time in my life was when my parents and my wife's parents set us up and arranged a marriage. That was a moment where it was like I knew for sure type of thing.
Oh. Wait a minute. How much time you got tonight?
I got all the time you want. When you said 2 hours, man, I'm expecting a couple. I got all the time we need.
Man, an arranged marriage. That's awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't. I tell people that because our parents did introduce us, and
they just kind of nudged you closer together.
Well, and to be honest with you, the first, we tried it twice. The second time it took. The first time was a crash and burn, but we
you must have figured something out to win over her heart.
Well, it was that there was some of that, and her parents pushing her to get out of her comfort zone a little bit. So
now keep in mind, John, this will be up on YouTube and anybody can watch it. So tread lightly, my friend.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all. I tell this story all the time because it confirms for me that there is a God because of the way that that whole thing came to, the way that my Vanderbilt experience happened and the people that were put into my life to make that come to fruition, and then the way that I was led to go on my mission for 2 years, and then the way that my wife and I met was, it's these things where you look and see that it was nothing short of a miracle the way that it really happened, and the people that were instrumental in making it happen.
Was the fourth moment when App State beat Michigan at Michigan in 07?
Hey, it's interesting. My brother, my sister-in-law, my uncle was the director of admissions at Appalachian when that happened, and so yeah, that could be counted. That would be a fifth one.
We'll say that's fifth. What was number 4?
Number 4 was recently, about a little over a year and a half ago, December 19th, 2021, my mom, who had been just my rock and my foundation. She and my dad were just they led me through my life and gave me the best life that a young kid could ever have. She got sick with COVID in November, right after Halloween of 2001, and spent 6 weeks in the hospital and didn't recover and passed away. And for me, it brought life into perspective, really, because I think too often in my life I've looked for, and this was probably the case even when I came to Vanderbilt. Truth be told, Bernard, I probably was more of a kid that should have gone to a Division II or 1AA school and played, just based on my talent and ability. I just lost my thought there.
That's okay, because I want to say something to you, John, and I appreciate you sharing really some very intimate moments of your life. And I'm so truly sorry to learn about your mom's passing. But what I do also want to tell you is, in response to you saying that you probably should have gone to Division II or a smaller school, what I'm hearing, and you and I talked about this right before we went on live, is you were the very best of teammates. You were the very best of a teammate. You got elected captain, and you're not a full-time starter. And that's what is a success. The scoreboard ultimately does not indicate the success of a team. Right. Yes, the wins and losses, that's historical. But the success of a team is, how well do the teammates treat each other? How much are these band of brothers truly there for themselves? And there's no higher honor on a team than to be elected captain. Right. And I wish I'd have been on your team. I wish you'd have been my captain. I know we're a few years apart, but that's the ultimate, to me, the way people think of you on a team.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. My thought came back to me. So, putting things into perspective, coming out of high school, I wanted to go to the program where I could play on TV. I could play against the big the Tennessees and the Floridas and the Georgias of the world, and I think I was doing it. I had this vision and goal of doing that, probably more for the recognition and the people coming to me and patting me on the back and the attaboys, and that was great. I loved every minute of being at Vanderbilt, and the day that I left was it was a emotional day, but seeing the things that really are important in life is family and faith and friends and helping one another, it's really just, it's put things completely into perspective for me.
Well, JB, I never spent a single day with you on campus, but I guarantee, from what I've seen before tonight and during tonight's conversation, you were one of those dudes that would just stop whatever he was doing. It didn't matter what was needed. If Carlton Hall, who just signed on with us, said, JB, I need you, you didn't even ask what it was. You just went and did it.
I got a story about, I don't know how long you want to go with this, but I got a story about.
Let's go.
So, along those lines, guys would call me. They'd call me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when they had a research paper or some kind of paper or assignment due for a class, and be like, Don, man, I have not gotten this done yet. Can I come over? You got an extra paper from last semester? I need some help. And that was me. I would always try to help and do all that I could. So freshman year, Carlton Hall, I looked up to him. I looked up to him a lot. He was my dude, man. And so freshman year, I was coming home for Christmas, and his parents had just moved to Asheboro, North Carolina, which is about an hour southeast of me.
Mhm.
And so he said, "Hey, man, my parents are in North Carolina. I'm going home for Christmas." I said, "Yeah, hop in with me. I'll drive you. We'll go back to the house." And so 6-hour ride from Nashville to Mount Airy, and then I think his parents came and met him or something. But on the way back, I think on the way out there, Carlton got in the car and I fell asleep, and I looked up. And he had my Jeep going about 85 or 90 down I-40 headed to North Carolina. And I noticed when I got home, the engine was ticking a little bit. And so while I was home, my dad took it to the mechanic and had him check it out. And the guy said, well, he said, the engine's going to go here pretty soon. So you can either take a chance, drive it back to Nashville and find somebody out there to fix it. Mm-hmm. Or, you can leave it here for a month and we can do something. So man, we got classes starting. We got classes starting in the morning. We got to go and we'll take our chance. And so we got in the old Jeep Cherokee and came up the Blue Ridge Mountains and headed down I-40. We got we got west of Knoxville. So we had to come through the old orange country there. We got west of Knoxville and stopped and got gas. And it was getting worse. This noise was getting worse. And there's a stretch between Knoxville and like Cookeville, Tennessee there, where at the time there was not a whole lot of anything. Mm-hmm. And so we're on that stretch of highway there, and I'm driving, all of a sudden you hear this awful noise in this engine, and it stops. And we coast to the side of the highway. We're sitting there, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. You got two college linebackers. Carlton was about 235, 240. My padlocks had paid off. I'd gotten up to about 215, 220 now. And we're on the side of the road, and the next closest town is 15 miles away. There's no cell phones at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we're sitting there, I'm like, man, I don't know what we're going to do, Seahall. Mm-hmm. And so this was another one of my testimonials of faith, I guess. We're sitting there, I'm like, and I didn't see how I'd known him for about 6 months. I didn't know what he thought about faith. And so I'm like, I get out and I'm trying to thumb somebody down and nobody's stopping. I'm like, man, we're screwed. I get back in the car and, just say a little quiet prayer to myself that somehow somebody will have mercy on us. Within 3 minutes of that, this car drives past us. They pull over to the side of the road. They back up. And it's an old man and his wife. He was probably 80 years old, and his wife was 80 years old. He rolls down his window and he says, "Sir, my whole life I have said I would never stop and pick somebody up on the side of the highway. But when I drove past you, I felt like I needed to stop and see if you were all right." And so here we are. So I got my buddy in the car, and Seahall gets out and he walks up to the car, and this old man's like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can let both of y'all in my car." And I said, "Sir, we're good people. We're not going to do anything to you." Anyway, so he drove us to the next town where we got quarters and used the payphone. And I called Angie. Angie was, if he's still on here, he was out of commission somewhere. He was out at one of his hangouts or something. So I called a guy, Eric Wisman, come pick me up. It was about an hour and 10 minutes away. And D Hall called AJ, I think. And so these guys, this is just, again, show you the closeness and unity of your teammates. They got in the car, drove an hour and a half, picked us up with all our bags, drove us back to school. And, worked out that where we broke down, there was a guy that had an old used engine, ended up costing less to fix it than it would have if I'd have done it at home. So that's my Seahawks story.
Man, in the mid 90s, really, there was really no internet at the time to speak of, or it was just the onset of it. Certainly, cell phones were not as prevalent as they are today, but it's a whole different mindset back then, wasn't it?
It
Because
was. I mean,
you don't have this device in your hand to fix everything. You had to think, you had to
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I sometimes some days I sit and wish that I could go back to those moments, where it's just
Yeah.
you're not as connected, you're not as distracted. Although regretfully we would not have this opportunity either if that were
No, there are some good things about technology, like conversations
yeah.
like this. And guys, I've got just a couple more minutes with John Bradley, and we're hearing some fantastic life lessons, some real stories. And I was going to ask you, and John, I don't know if this leads to a bigger, longer conversation piece, but when you're viewed in that way by your friends, by your band of brothers, that they know that they can count on you, you take it as a responsibility, but there's also the burden component of that. And what I mean by that is, what if I don't come through this time for Kenny Simon, who just signed on?
Hey Simon, number 6.
What if I'm being selfish with my time because I need to study or I need to sleep? I know that has got to have gone through your head at times. How do you balance that responsibility with that burden that comes with it?
I'll, I guess I've always looked at those things a little differently, I guess. My it's something that I inherited from my mom, that she was always thinking of others before herself, which can be a good and a bad thing, right? I mean, you have to obviously take care of yourself and your own priorities to a certain extent, but I've always felt that if there were people that depended on you, and you had that responsibility, and you had the means to help those individuals, that if you did it, your own situation or your own things would somehow find a way of working themselves out, which is 95% of my life has been that way. I feel like if you are unselfish, and now there are times where you have to just say, you know what, no, I can't do it. I can't do it today, or can you give me a little more time to do it? For instance, last night or 2 nights ago when we were supposed to do this, I felt terrible about it. I've been planning on this for 2 months, Bernard, since you sent me, and I thought I'd set everything aside and tried to schedule it, which I'm not a good scheduling person. But, it does eat at you though when you feel like you let somebody down.
JB, I was cursing you all night long.
Well, I told you we could make a good story out of that too.
That's right. That's right.
Angie's still on here. He will remember that there were many a nights where he and I were sitting in a dorm room and we had an exam or a paper or some kind of project due, and it was down to the last minute, and we had not, we decided to go to the room and take a nap, and that we get up at midnight and start doing that thing, and then we didn't get it done, and so I was put up to calling the professor, the David Cordres and Stephen Buckles, and saying, hey, I gave him the old sob athlete story. Man, we've had practice all week long. I hadn't had any time to do it. Can you give me a little more time, right? And so Angie was joking the other day when I was telling him I was going. He said, "John, you're going to be late for that Conversations with Commodores with Bernard." And sure enough, man, here I am 2 days late, and so I'm fulfilling my reputation.
I'd rather have you late than not have you at all, my friend. This has been fantastic, and we got a couple more minutes, but I want to throw this to you. I know you still follow the game, whether it's on the high school level because you live back in your hometown where you grew up, or maybe you follow the Panthers. I'm not sure what level of the sport you follow. Do you like the current version of the sport on any level?
Um, I feel like they're making it powder puff, Bernard. I mean, I come from the days, and you come from the days where it was all about how hard could you hit somebody and how hard could you get hit and get back up.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Now it's two-hand touch on the quarterback.
and so that, that disappoints me a little bit, but I feel like there's still a lot of life lessons that these kids learn from participating in a team sport, and the work ethic that they develop from doing it, and that sets them up for whatever it is that they end up doing in life. My high school here this year, actually, they've dropped down to 1A because of their enrollment, but they won the 1A state championship this year, and they've only done that a handful of times here in North Carolina. And so still some good athletes and some good football to watch out there. Panthers hadn't been much to talk about, and so
hold on, JB.
oh,
Kenny Simon says that John and Jim there's no work at Vanderbilt.
no work.
Kenny, those fighting words, my friend.
He said no work.
No work done at Vanderbilt.
Well, I tell you what we did. We worked on. We spent a lot of time working on how we could skirt the system a little bit. We'd always.
Oh, he just doubled down. He said none. Oh, we got Joe P in the house. Joe Peebles has joined us. Hey, Joe. Joe was on the show a while back. What a good dude.
That was a good one. I watched that. That was a good one.
Let's finish on this, John. And I didn't mean to interrupt the thought that you had, but I know you keep up a little bit about what's going on campus with the athletic department.
Right.
I know you follow to the extent that you can, either through our group or whatever time you have, and hanging out or talking with your roommate. With your teammates. Do you like what you're seeing that's going on with the football program, or does it still concern you that maybe we're not headed? And I know that may not be a fair question, but it's one that it's too easy right now to see all these changes to automatically assume, oh, that's going to be great. We're going to be great. We're going to win 9 games next. That's too easy to just sugarcoat it.
So I was, when I left school, and I still had some people in the football offices that I could call, and if I wanted to come to a game, they would, they could get me tickets. And I remember growing up as a kid, and my dad always had a couple of tickets to go to a Duke game. So we spent a lot of time in Durham at the Duke games. And so I always looked forward to that when I had my own kids. Well, when I called Andrea Kane a couple years ago, and it's like, hey, can I get some tickets? She's like, John, it's all done online now. You probably have to go and buy your own tickets. It rubbed me the wrong way, I guess, for a little bit, but that was fixed last year when I came to Nashville for a work thing, and I brought my son with me, and I called over to McGugan and set up for Chris. What's Chris's last name?
Griffin.
Yeah, Chris. He set up for me to come in and take a tour and stuff. And so I got there, and we were walking through the offices, and Hy Lewis was there, and Hy was one of my buddies back in college. And so they took us on a tour, and Coach Lee was there. And when he came out and met my son, brought us into his office and got pictures with him. And it made me feel like that there's the appreciation for the old heads and the old guys that have somewhat paved the way at Vanderbilt were still appreciated and remembered. it helped me to kind of change my feeling toward it, because I thought, shoot, I should be able to, having gone, not that I'm feel entitled or anything, but feel like the 4 years you spend there and you give to the school, that you should be able to come back and support them. And anyway, he gave me that warm and fuzzy feeling again, and I hope that he can do great things. I really do. Anywhere I go now, and when people that know that I went to school there and played ball there, they're like, "Do you ever go back to?" I was at a work thing today, and they asked me if I ever go back to Nashville, and I told them, "Hey, I went back last year," and I pull out my phone and show them the picture of me and Clark and my son, and so. I think that they're, Candace Lee, she was at school when I was there. I was friends with Candace. And so, I think that they certainly have got the resources and are trying to do it. And I want to be a part of it.
Well, I think that they get it. They understand, with all of the changes of administrations with athletic directors over the years and head coaches with football and changes in the administration. I think they understand the need to bring the alums back into the fold and help to grow that family again and heal some wounds, whether they know it or don't.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear that you had a positive experience.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think probably some of the problem is the turnover. I mean, poor guys, man. I mean, how much pressure are they under? And so. Some of these programs where they've had the same coach in place for years and years and years, it's easy for them to.
It is, because they've got continuity that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, guys, I knew this was going to be a good one. I knew JB was going to deliver, and boy, did he. John, I can't thank you enough, friend, for sharing really some very personal accounts, and just, man, I wished I'd have been one of your teammates. I really do.
I thought the same thing about you, Bernard, ever since I've followed you on this and all the good things that you're doing for the program and the people that you're bringing back into it. It's phenomenal, man. I appreciate you.
Even Kenny Simon, you feel that way about Kenny Simon being back in the football?
Well, at number 6, he was a troublemaker back then. He was on.
Kenny, we love you, buddy.
I looked up to him, though, man. He was an awesome dude.
He still is an awesome dude, even if he's giving you a hard time.
As a matter of fact, he and Ronnie Gordon were 2 of the first people that I remember meeting when I got on campus.
And yet you still stayed. There you go.
You asked about me being led to Nashville. I've never been a strong decision maker. And so fortunately for me, my decision was made pretty much for me. And it was just great.
Guys, this is why I do this show. It's conversations like this. You can't replace it. It's invaluable, sharing the oral history of our program and the guys and women who created it and built those foundations, like our man right here, John Bradley. So thank you again, John. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, Bernard.
Guys, I'm off next week. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Just check out, I've got the whole list. We got guys, we got folks on all different parts of the program, former players, people who are involved in the collective, and some other things. Anchor down.